Well, hello and welcome back to Theofaith. And today we're going to be continuing in our weekly study in the book of Revelation. We're going about a chapter, half a chapter at a time, sometimes a little less. We took our time going through the churches of Revelation. Now we're in a transition place, chapters 4 and 5. John's viewing what's going on in heaven before he returns to what's going to be happening on the earth in chapter 6. So we'll be, as I said, in chapter 5 today. This is the Lamb who will reign, is how I've titled the chapter. Help us to get through it. Encourage you to grab your Bible. In fact, this would be a great time to just pause the video and read through the chapter. It's really not that long, 14 verses, and I think it gives you a great overview of what we'll be talking about here. So do that and then come back. We will be moving through the book of Revelation. We're in this last section. As you recall, our outline comes right out of the book itself, out of Revelation 1:19, where John's told to write down the things which you have seen, the things which are, and the things which are to come. And we're in that last section, prophetic section here, the things that are to come. And we're talking about the judge of the whole earth, verses chapters 4 and 5. It's really discussing the qualifications, why these judges are qualified to judge the heavens and the earth. A couple of other comments before I get too far into the chapter here. I'm in Estes Park, Colorado, and it is calving season here among the elk. So we have all this morning, I've had 3 cows and 2 calves in my backyard grazing, and our dog is kind of going crazy, barking at them from inside the house. So my apologies if you hear the dog barking in the background. I hear her crying right now, wanting to get out there. The other thing, let's see, can't remember what the other thing was, so maybe it'll come back to me. But here's our overview. Chapter 4 was God on his throne. Chapter 5, we see the risen Jesus. So again, to reorient you, we saw what was going on earth in the historical section, talking about in chapters 2 and 3, the churches that were on earth and Jesus's judgment and commendation for those churches. And then the scene shifted to heaven in chapter 4, and John saw God on his throne, and in his chapter he's seeing the risen Jesus. I've got kind of 5 sections in this chapter to help guide us through here. Chapter 5, beginning in verse 1, is about the scroll. And this scroll is got 7 seals, and those seals are the judgments we're going to be seeing in chapter 6 and beyond. I think Mark Hitchcock is right in his book, The End, referring to the scroll as a testamentary disposition, which I'll explain what that is as we go through this. Then we go to a search from heaven to find out who is worthy to open that scroll. And in verses 6 and 7, we find the Savior. You could probably hear the dog in the background now. And then finally, a song of worship and anticipation about what's going to happen in verses 8 through 14 of chapter 5. So bear with me as the dog is going a little crazy here. So, verse 1, John writes, I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a book written inside and on the back, sealed up with 7 seals. So the person on the throne here is God, perhaps Jesus in the form of God, but a person on the throne holding this scroll in their right hand, that hand of power. Different interpretations that you'll run across as you go to other Bible studies, or perhaps you're participating in BSF. Some consider this to be the title deed of the earth. Others the completion of the book of Revelation. I think that's an interesting perspective, that this might be in this scroll the rest of the book. Also called the book of redemption or the book of life. So this would be the sealed up, who are among the elect, the saved. Others consider it to be a record of the sins of man, which will be spread out and judged in the coming chapters. But I take this last view, this testamentary disposition. It may seem a little obscure to you. Let me explain what that is. It's a transfer of property, essentially. And it's a transfer of property that takes effect on the death of the person making it. So it's kind of a trust. We can consider it a sort of a trust. The testator, that is the person creating the testamentary disposition, retains control of the property until their death. And then after their death, this becomes a gift of property, which takes effect at the time of the death of that testator or the person making the disposition. So, give you an example. This past year, my wife suffered the death of her both of her parents within 6 months of one another. They left behind a trust, but I'm going to refer to that as the testamentary disposition, which transferred essentially all the property to and all their wealth, everything that they had accumulated, homes and cars, and they lived in a farming community, so all the farming implements, everything transferred to my wife. It would have been a testamentary disposition. Upon their death, all that property came to my wife. Now, this was more than a testamentary disposition. I don't know why I have to explain this. I feel compelled. It was a trust that my wife was the executor over. So she has a brother and a sister, and the trust specified how that wealth was to be distributed. So, but the testamentary disposition is this transfer of property. We could call it a will, or it's similar to a gift of property. Takes that inheritance and legally conveys it to the person who is going to be receiving it. I've read my own research that this was the only document with 7 seals in the ancient world. If you have more insight into that, I'd love to hear from you, but that was by research. Only document with 7 seals. So it seems to be the case that this is a testamentary disposition, transferring property, in this case the earth, to Jesus. We see the earth as an inheritance throughout the Bible. This isn't a new idea. This isn't something that's originating in the book of Revelation. We see that the earth is given to man in Genesis 1:26 through 28, I guess, where the land is put under the control and the stewardship of man. Of course, it was lost at the fall. So just a couple chapters later, that the right to rule and own the earth, essentially, effectively, was taken away from man. In Psalm 2, verse 8, there's a decree of the transfer of this wealth, this nation, this land under the control of the king that's going to be put in place. This was offered to Israel to reign and rule, but it was rejected in the Gospel of Matthew, and chapter 12 is all about that rejection. And here we find it in chapter 5 being conferred to Christ himself. And Jesus is going to realize this in Revelation chapter 20 when he returns to the earth and establishes his throne. So I think that's what's going on with this scroll. This scroll represents the testamentary disposition that's transferring the earth from its creator to Jesus, who is going to be its judge and its ruler. Verses 2 through 4 then we move into this from the scroll to this area of a search. John says that I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to break its seals?" So they're searching for who can do this. This is a strong angel that's proclaiming this. This may be the same angel that's referred to as a strong angel in chapter 10, verse 1 and 18, verse 21. Kind of angelic beings, demonic beings are going to be evident throughout the book of Revelation. Seems like in that last times, during that period of tribulation, there's going to be a rise of supernatural activity in the world, both angelic and demonic. So we'll see that happening. And this word of the strong angel here and later seems to introduce a new phase of destructive judgment, not destructive judgment of its own, but a new phase that's going to be happening from chapter 6 through chapter 19. Worthy is the question he's asking. Who is worthy to open the book? Well, worthy, axios in the Greek word there, is used 4 times in the book, used 4 times here. And it basically means fit for the task. Who is fit for the task of opening this book and breaking its seals? Who is, in other words, fit for the task of receiving authority and responsibility for the world? It's a great question. Through the course of history, evil people have tried to take that task upon themselves and have failed miserably, often ending in their death. But in this case, the angel is looking. And what we find is in verse 3, no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the book or to look into it. In other words, what he's saying here is no created being is worthy to have that kind of authority, that kind of responsibility. Who's he looking at? Well, those in heaven, I think, are, of course, all the angels. I think at this point, it's safe to say that the raptured church is in heaven at this point. I think the rapture occurs in chapters 4 and 5, and I think at this point, in chapter 5, verse 4, I think the church is in heaven. So, verse 3, so the ones in heaven are the angelic beings and the raptured church. No one there able to take on this responsibility. On the earth are, of course, the unbelievers that have been left behind, those who are remaining after the church has been raptured. So no one on earth is fit for this task of authority and responsibility for the world. Under the earth would be those dead, both from the Old Testament that have gone to the place of Sheol, and both believers and unbelievers at this point, the Old Testament believer and unbelievers from the Old Testament days. Not that they're together right now, but they are both considered, they're dead, they're under the earth, and none of them are able to have authority and responsibility for the world. So really no created being here, no one on earth, in heaven, under the earth that has died is worthy of this. And John hears this, and verse 4, he begins to weep greatly. We can imagine John sobbing at this point because no one was found, there's that word again, worthy to open the book or look into it. I like this comment. One commentator said John's continual weeping reflects his sorrow that the revelation of God's plans and their execution are going to remain hidden, or we could say postponed, because no one has sufficient authority to open the scroll. So, John is seeing this, and there's no one who can step forward and claim the earth and bring the earth to its rightful conclusion. And he's weeping over that. Would make us sad too if we had no hope, wouldn't it? But John does have a hope. He's weeping, but he has a hope. And we'll see that developing here in a minute. Verse 5, one of the elders said to me, well, remember there were 24 elders around the throne of God, worshiping him, tossing their Stephanos crowns in front of him. And one of the elders stepped forward and said to me, stop weeping. Okay, put a sock in it, John, stop weeping. Behold, or check this out, or look at this. The lion that is from the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has overcome so as to open the book and its 7 seals. Verse 6 is going to present this lion as also a lamb, so we'll come to that. But he has overcome so as to open the seals. So he has been triumphant. Jesus' death on the cross appeared to be a defeat, but in heaven it was a triumph. And that's what we see here. And these ways of describing Jesus really echo so much from the Old Testament. In Genesis 49, 8 to 11, it said that the ruler of Israel is going to come from the tribe of Judah. He's going to be the whelp of a lion from the tribe of Judah. 2 Samuel 7 says that the ruler is going to come from David's line, the root of David, the source of David, the root of David. And Jesus was in that Davidic line. He was, as he told the Pharisees and Sadducees, and I think Matthew chapter 22, that he was both David's offspring and David's Lord. He was both his son and the Lord of David. So this is identifying uniquely and in threefold Jesus as the ruler, the Davidic ruler, and the ruler that has overcome. Go on to verse 6 then. So I saw between the throne with the 4 living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. This is very, very interesting here. It might be a little confusing on what's being communicated here. Let's take a look, first of all. One of the qualifications of this lamb is that he's standing as if slain. Well, that word slain means in Greek slaughtered. It's used of a killing of a person by violence. So this lamb is more than a lamb. It's more than an animal. It's been someone who's been slaughtered, violently slaughtered. And that's what John is seeing here. This bloodied, violently abused lamb from the tribe of Judah standing by the throne. And again, notice in verse 5, he's identified as a lion. Verse 6, as a lamb. I think this describes both the first coming of Jesus as a lamb and his second coming as a lion. As I mentioned several times, as we see Jesus in the book of Revelation, we see him in a way perhaps that the rest of the Bible doesn't depict him. He is not the Jesus meek and mild. He is not the Jesus before the throne of the high priest taking the abuse. He's not the Jesus of perhaps some picture in your Bible of children around his feet and a lamb across his shoulders. No, this is Jesus risen, victorious, ready to bring his rule to the earth, ready to conquer the earth through these tribulations that are coming, and establish his throne and take his rightful place as the recipient of that testamentary disposition. He owns the earth, and he's getting ready to do that as the lion. Mark Hitchcock, again, I'll refer to him several times. Really recommend his book, The End. It's a little bit intimidating. It's quite a long verse, quite a long book. And it's in some ways an update and an expansion of Dwight Pentecost's book, Things to Come. Really well done, easy read, even though it's so long. Mark Hitchcock says only one person in heaven and on earth was found worthy to take the scroll, to open its seals, and to begin the step-by-step process of snatching control of the world from evil and forever vanquishing sin and death. That one person, of course, Jesus Christ. The search then ends, doesn't it, with the Savior in verses 6 and 7. He also comments, here's a simple but profound biblical truth which cannot be overemphasized. Apart from the person and redeeming work of Jesus Christ, history is an enigma. That is, we can't understand it. Christ and Christ alone has the key to the meaning of human history. Apart from the victorious return of Jesus, history's going nowhere. So, to expand on that a little bit, I'm teaching a series in a fellowship called Solid Bread Community in Fort Collins, Colorado, a series on the biblical covenants. And I'm laying out how those biblical covenants are how God is going to bring his reign back to the earth. Without those covenants and without the fulfillment of those covenants in and through Jesus, history is going nowhere. As the ancients thought, it was perhaps just a continuous cycle, never ending and never finishing. But from a biblical perspective, beginning with creation and ending with the new creation, God is working what one commentator calls his Genesis project, his creation project, to bring to culmination the restoration of the earth and everyone on it. In verse 7 then, it says, this lamb who he saw came and took the scroll out of his right hand of him who sat on the throne. So he took the scroll in verse 7. It's simple. We see this transfer of authority in Daniel chapter 7. And the lion, I think at this point, the lamb is being commissioned to bring judgment to the earth, that he is receiving that disposition that gives him the right to reign and rule over the whole earth, and to bring that reign and rule to bear through the judgment of these tribulation seals and horns and bulls and horns. We have this then, a new round of worship in verse 8. He said, when he had taken the book, the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders, fell down before the Lamb, each one holding a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sang a new song. Let's look at verse 8. They're equipped for worship, aren't they? They've got those harps. I don't play a harp. I don't play a guitar. I don't play anything. I play Spotify. That's all I do. But these men are equipped. They're ready to worship. They're going to worship exuberantly. They are with these prayers of the saints. Probably, I think, these prayers, verse 10 tells us that they're prayers for God to judge, bring judgment upon the unrighteous, and for his kingdom to come. You know, you could pray that too. Sometimes we focus all of our prayers on things we want, or perhaps on our health concerns, or the health concerns of others. We're quick to pray for our needs, but sometimes slow to pray for the things that God says he's going to do. In fact, you might think that what's the point of praying for something that God's going to do anyway? Well, God has not only ordained what he's going to do, but he's ordained the means through which he will do it. One of those means are prayer. And I would really encourage you to join with the saints in heaven and some saints on earth, myself among them, that pray for not only the return of Jesus, but that he would return and judge the unrighteous and rule and reign in the kingdom that's coming. I think in the context of the book as well, we can say that, again, to remind you, this book is being circulated among 7 churches that are existing. And those churches would see that these prayers are going up to heaven and they're being heard. What a comfort that will be, and what a comfort it is to us to know that our prayers, that our things that we ask God for, that we yearn for, that we hunger for, that those go up to the throne of God and they are heard in heaven. So I'd encourage you to pray. Pray, of course, for your needs and the needs of others, but also pray for God's judgment to break upon the earth and for his kingdom to come. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Perhaps Jesus taught his own disciples to pray, thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth and as it is in heaven. It's good prayer that we could pray. Verse 9, then, we see this new song, this new worship song being sung here, saying a new song, saying, worthy are you to take the book, to break its seals. Remember earlier it was asking, who is worthy? Well, now we know you are worthy to take the book and to break its seals, for you were slain and purchased for God with your blood from men from every, and purchased with your blood men from every tribe and tongue and people and nation. So Jesus is fit for the task. He is the one who's worthy. That's what that means, worthy. Remember, fit for the task. What makes him worthy? Well, let's take a look at that. Number one, you were slain. There's that word again. He died. He endured death for all men. He purchased for God with his blood men from every tribe and tongue. In other words, Jesus redeemed the people of God through his death. That's why he's worthy. He has not only died for them, but his death was effective. He purchased a group of people for God with his blood. And it was from all people. As you go through there, your blood, men from every tribe. And I think the tribe here is a reference to the tribes of Israel. And tongue, I think it's expanding now to those foreign nations around Israel. And people and nation. So he is dying for all, is what he's saying here, that Jesus' death was effective to purchase from every nation, every place on earth, men that are redeemed. And again, allowing them to, in verse 10, reign on the earth. Notice that in verse 10, you have made them to be a kingdom and priests to our God, and they will reign upon the earth. That's future tense. Some would say that we are reigning today, or should be. We should be asserting the rule and reign of the church on the earth today. But what this says is they will reign upon the earth. When Jesus comes back in chapter 19, he's going to set up thrones, and there will be, I think, the apostles reigning over the 12 tribes of Israel. And he's already told the church that they will reign with him. So they'll have a role in that kingdom to reign as well. So I think this is Jesus is the answer to that question about who is worthy. God the Father in chapter 4, God the Son in chapter 5. His qualifications right there in verse 9. Verse 11, then John says, then he looked, and I heard the voice of many angels around the throne, and the living creatures, and the elders, and the number of them was myriads of myriads, thousands of thousands is what he's saying here. It's a huge, uncountable number. Several older commentators talk about that we're going to be astounded by the number of people who are saved ultimately at the end. And that's what it seems to be here. Large myriads and myriads, 10,000s times 10,000s, thousands of thousands, a number that John just can't imagine, a number that's not given to him. Later, he's going to be very specific about a very specific group of people, 144,000. But here, it's uncountable number of people who are saying with a loud voice in verse 12. This is loud worship in heaven. You're going to see this over and over in the book of Revelation, that the heaven is a loud place. It's not quiet. There are periods of silence. There'll be a 30-minute period of silence, I think in beginning at chapter 16. But typically it's a loud place resonating with the worship of Jesus. I just recorded something in the Psalms and encouraged from the basis of the Psalm to worship today like this. This is a good example for us. We're going to be in heaven worshiping loud and joyfully and exuberantly forever. Why not start today? So that's what John heard, a voice of many angels, many sounds, a loud voice of an innumerable multitude. Again, I think this is at least composed partly of the raptured church in heaven. John saw 4 living creatures. We saw these in chapter 4, and we'll see them again throughout the book, that these living creatures seem to be an intermediary between God and the earth, bringing these judgments on the earth. We see the elders, as again before, and again, 10,000, 10,000s. Do the math. Innumerable. I mean, John is just, again, we see him so often here straining to describe what he's looking at. He's never seen anything like this before. Imagine how the difficulty you would have describing something that you've never seen, and neither have the people you're talking to. You couldn't say, well, the best you could say is it's like this or like that, but he's just struggling to describe what he's looking at. This is kind of the picture here that is being painted. We see Jesus at the center, right? Jesus at the center of this multitude. And immediately around Jesus and the throne of God are these 4 living creatures. We could imagine them on each corner of the throne, being emissaries for God. The next group, the next rank, are 24 elders. Again, in my view anyway, representing the 12 tribes and the apostles, the church. And then around them, a host of angels, angelic worshipers. And then finally us. We're the all creatures, I think. We are the multitude, the 10,000 times 10,000. That's what he's seeing here. Jesus at the center, the throne at the center. We saw that in chapter 4. Verses 5 through 12 then, we're in this section of the song and the Savior. Says it's just continuously repeating, I think, in their worship that Jesus is worthy. Notice what he says here: receive power, riches, wisdom, might, honor, glory, blessing. Every created thing is going to submit to the Lamb on the throne. That's what we're anticipating here. This is what we're looking forward to. Believer and unbeliever alike, every knee will bow and every tongue confess. God said this about himself personally in Isaiah 45:23. It's applied to Jesus and repeated by Paul in Philippians 2:9 and 10. This is Jesus as God. He's sharing his glory. He's sharing his throne. He's sharing the worship. Compare, for example, Revelation 4:11 to 5:12, which this slide tries to do. 4:11, it said that God was, you, Lord, our God, are worthy to receive glory and honor and power because you created all things and because of your will they exist and were created. This is echoed, I think, largely in Revelation 5:12 about the Son. It says, worthy is the Lamb. Worthy are you, Lord. Worthy is the Lamb that was slain. So to receive power and riches and wisdom and might and honor and glory and blessing. So God receives these things because he created all things, Jesus receives these things because he died for them. And they share this honor, really. They share this honor, they share the power, they share the glory. The Father, the Son, and the Spirit together are both creator and redeemer. That's why they are worthy to bring judgment. And again, verse 13, he says to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be blessing and honor and glory and dominion forever and ever. So the four prior, what we could say, ovations are all incorporated here together and ascribed to both the Father and the Son, to him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. The Father and the Son are together worshiped in the same way. And this is important, and it speaks to Jesus' deity, because the Lord said in Isaiah 42 that he would not share his glory with another. And in Isaiah 48:11, my glory I will not give to another. So are we contradicting here, or is Genesis or Revelation 5, 11 through 14 contradicting what he said in Isaiah? No, not at all. He is not giving his glory to another. He is giving his glory to the same. This is the same God, different persons. They share the same glory. They share the throne. They share the same essence. Sharing that same essence means they can be praised and worshiped in the same way. I skipped over a section in verse 6 you may have noticed and may have been wondering what I was, if I was going to address that. Well, here it is. Another thing is not only do they share these accolades, not only do they share these glory, honor, and power, these adjectives, but they also do they share worship, the throne, but they also share the Spirit. In verse 6, it said, I saw between the throne and the four living creatures and the elders a lamb standing as if slain. Here's the part I skipped until I come to here. Having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent into all the earth. So the lamb has the 7 spirits of God. The lamb shares that. The Spirit, these eyes and these horns, the Spirit is looking. The Spirit has got power, omnipresent, as we'll see in the subsequent chapters, omnipotent and omnipresent. And the Spirit is simultaneously both the Father and the Son. So we get a picture here of the Trinity, don't we? We get a picture of the Father and the Son and the Spirit all together, one essence, 3 different persons. Each person has a different role or a task within the Godhead, but they're all the same person. They're all the same essence, not the same person. Be a heretic if I said they were the same person. But they're all the same essence. Now, one way to misunderstand the Trinity is to say that there's one God, 3 persons, and that one God presents himself as one of those 3 persons at different times. So sometimes God is God the Father, sometimes God is God the Son, sometimes God is God the Holy Spirit. Well, that's a error. It's actually an ancient heresy in the church. Today we call it modalism, that the Lord takes on different modes of representation, modalism. The biblical doctrine is that all 3 persons exist simultaneously, one essence. And that's what we see here. We see the Father on the throne, the Lamb on the throne, the Son, both having continuous action of that verb there, continuously having the Spirit. So this is a simultaneous activity that's going on here, and that John is witnessing. Can only imagine what John might have seen here, except, he's telling us as best he can, I think. So let's take a minute here, the end of the chapter, to just reflect on some personal applications. We don't want to just walk away from the Bible with our head full of interpretation, I guess, without any application. It's not what we want to do. We want to both understand it, apply it to ourselves, and respond to it. So we see God, the Lamb, and the Spirit all on the throne. The triune God is on his throne. And we owe him and no one else our allegiance. Again, we're here in the United States, we're entering into this silly season of campaigning, and everyone's going to be lining up behind their own candidates, just like it happened in the church in Corinth. It's going to happen here in the United States. I'm for Joe. I'm for Donald. I'm for John. But really, brothers and sisters, we are for no one but Jesus. That we rise above petty politics. We rise above personality-driven elections, and we worship and owe our allegiance only to God in heaven and no one else. Another application is that someday we're going to be with the elders and the living creatures and the angels. The whole church will be there together, worshiping loud. Did you notice that? It's loud in heaven. We need to be doing that now. Don't be shy in church. Don't be shy in your fellowship groups where you worship together. Worship exuberantly, worship joyfully, worship in anticipation about what the Word has revealed to us is going to happen. Enjoy that worship, and God will enjoy it as well. I showed you that picture. It looked like a bullseye, but in heaven, really, Jesus is at the center of everything. I mean, he is on the throne with the Father. The living creatures, the elders, the angels, and the church all around him. It's theater in the round for sure, with Jesus at the center. Shouldn't he be the center of our lives even right now? Don't wait for heaven. Don't wait until you're there and then Jesus will be the center of your life. You could live that way now. It doesn't mean that you have to be a hermit. Doesn't mean that you need to be walking around, as you see some people sometimes carrying crosses down the street. But it does mean that you have to put him at the center and live in light of his coming. Live in light of the fact that he's returning and he's going to establish his kingdom on earth. And God, just notice here, get this in your mind, not something so much to respond to, but something to think about, is that God, through Jesus, has the right to judge his own creation. We have sometimes wonder who has the right and why is God going to destroy the whole earth and why is he going to do that and what right does he have, and all these people and all these, we'll see in these coming judgments, all these trees, all these oceans, all these springs. Well, he created it all. He can do what he wants with it because he created it. It's his. Give you just a poor illustration of that. When my kids were young, and we were fortunate enough to get them a car when they were driving, and they would take the car out and sometimes come back late, and I'd be waiting for them, or my wife would be waiting for them, and we say, okay, from now on, you have to have the car back by 10 o'clock, 10 p.m., or 9 or 8 or whatever it is. And of course, they'd act indignantly. They'd rebel. They'd resist. They'd buck as you tried to put the saddle on them, so to speak. And what? That's my car. What right do you have to tell me when I have to bring it in? Well, the reality, I reminded them, was it's my car. And my right is because I own that car and it's mine. So it's got to be back in when I say so. Same thing with God through Jesus. God created the earth. Jesus has redeemed it. And they have the right to judge their own creation. This is what we're anticipating now as we go ahead. We just finished these two chapters, 4 and 5. So again, to just remind you what you're looking at here is that numbered line from 1 to 22 represent each of the chapters of the book of Revelation. Chapters 1, 2, and 3, the church has been mentioned over and over and over again. Chapters 4 and 5 is the Lamb and God the Father, the judge, that are about to bring judgment on the earth. Starting in the next chapter, we're going to see the beginnings and the extent of the tribulation. The rapture is going to happen before that. John 14, 1 Corinthians 15, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians all describe the rapture of the church. It's not a novel doctrine. It's not a new doctrine. It's something that Jesus taught the disciples. We'll go through the tribulation, and then when we come to chapter 19, we'll see Jesus' physical return to earth, his second advent, his establishment of his kingdom in chapter 20, where again the church is mentioned, and then the eternal state, chapters 21 and 22. What's going on? What's happening here is that Jesus is bringing his kingdom to the earth. He's doing this in a way that the faithful who are left on the earth, who were not raptured with the church but come to faith later, they will be called to perseverance and godliness. They're going to be called to stand firm. We have difficult times we have to stand firm in right now. Their trials will be 10 times more difficult than ours. And we'll see that as we go through these judgments, seal, trumpets, and bowls. And again, the return of Jesus, his reign and rule on the earth is not a new doctrine. His premillennial return is taught throughout the scriptures and the kingdom as well. So you might want to take a picture of that or stop the video. Those are all references to the kingdom, Jesus' return, or the rapture there. All right. So that's chapter 5. We've gone through chapters 1 and 2, the things which John saw. And then chapters 3 and 4, which was the churches. We've seen that. And now in chapters 4 and 5, I guess 2 and 3 were the churches. 4 and 5 were the introduction of the judges. And now beginning in chapter 6, we'll be seeing the opening of the 7 seals in that first round of judgment that comes on the earth. So I pray, brothers and sisters, this is useful for you. Just notice I didn't turn on my, well, you don't need to see me anyway. Didn't turn on my studio lights here. There you go. But we've recorded this, so let's go with it. And I pray you find it useful and that you're finding the book of Revelation maybe an understandable to a degree that you haven't seen it before. So God bless you and enjoy our trip through this important and final book, final revelation of our Lord. God bless you.